Hello, my name is Karabo Takadi from Absa Agribusiness. Joining me to talk about the bird flu outbreak currently in South Africa is Dr. Craig Celliers from Kuiper Group. Dr. Craig, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Karabo.
So, Dr. Craig, what is avian influenza?
Avian influenza is a viral disease caused by the influenza type A virus that infects chickens. The common word that we use is bird flu for the virus. There are two types of influenza virus, low pathogenic and high pathogenic avian influenza. Low pathogenic influenza is the type that doesn't really seem to make the birds sick. Although it can infect the birds, they can shed the virus, it does not make them sick. Highly pathogenic avian influenza are the group of avian influenza viruses that unfortunately kill the birds or result in serious illness within the flock.
Okay, so where does this disease come from, and can it be found in other parts of the world as well?
Avian influenza viruses are found throughout the world, all over the world. Certain strains are more prevalent in certain areas. This particular outbreak that we are currently dealing with is an H5N8 strain. Now, this strain seems to have originated in Southeast Asia in 2014, and it then slowly made its way across Europe, infected and caused a lot of problems there. It was then found and picked up in America. And if you look at how the disease spread, it seems to have followed the migratory routes of your waterfowl or your shorebirds. So that virus is definitely prevalent or present in that population of birds. Towards November last year, we found the first positive case in Africa. We had a case up in Egypt in November. From there, it spread down and was picked up, isolated in Uganda. Shortly thereafter, up in the Congo. And then towards the beginning of this year, we had the Zimbabwe outbreak. That got us all on our back foot, and we were all very worried about the scenario. And in June, we had our first positive case in South Africa.
So how is this disease transmitted, and can human beings now be worried?
The disease is shed when a bird is infected. That bird is then sick, so the virus is actively replicating in the bird, and it is shedding it then in either the respiratory secretions, so snot nose from the bird, or with the virus also infects the gastrointestinal tract, so feces from that infected bird can also potentially contain the virus. So either another bird that is now not sick comes into direct contact with that sick individual, or the shedding of that virus in the form of feces or contaminated material, like a water source or feed that sick bird has had contact with. And then that bird, that naive bird, has now been exposed to the virus and can get sick. I think one thing that we need to be cognitive of is that we are potential transmitters of that virus to healthy birds. So if I have to walk onto a farm where birds are sick and my shoes come into contact with feces that has got shedded virus in it, and I then walk into a house that is healthy, I'm now physically carrying that virus into the healthy house, and I am now the vector of that disease. So people can be vectors for the virus. Shared equipment between sites. I think, and that is what we are focusing on in terms of upgrading our biosecurity around the farms. This particular strain, this H5N8 strain, at the moment and throughout the outbreaks that have occurred in America and in Europe, has not transmitted to humans. So it has not been able to jump species. At the moment, it only infects poultry, and I think that is something that we need to recognize. So all poultry product, even infected product in this case, is not a health risk for humans.
What are the clinical signs of the disease?
Okay, as mentioned before, the virus is called bird flu, so you're going to see a sick chicken that looks like the poor thing has got flu. It'll sit down, be incredibly depressed, ruffled feathers. You might see nasal secretions of the bird. From the bird. Green diarrhea is something that's also often picked up on. The birds might show hemorrhaging on the legs, hemorrhaging in the comb, that's little blood speckles, looks like bruising. Unfortunately, due to the nature of this particular virus is that by the time you see these clinical symptoms, your birds are already dying.
How is the disease diagnosed?
The disease is unfortunately diagnosed by your mortality pattern. The birds get sick very quickly and they die very quickly. We do and we are required to take samples from those birds and send it to the laboratory. The laboratories do PCRs and they do further viral isolations to tell you which strain you are dealing with. So they will confirm it for you. But just because of the way that the birds die so quickly, we can immediately know that in this case we are dealing with a highly pathogenic avian influenza virus.
What is being done to prevent or control this disease?
We cannot really prevent the disease. The disease is here. It's in our natural wild bird population. But we can do certain things to try and keep it out. So there is a large focus at the moment at a farm level on biosecurity. So that is keeping all visitors out and trying to minimize the movement of equipment and people on sites and between farms. From an industry point of view, we are working with DAF, the Department of Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries. We are working with SAPA, that's the South African Poultry Association, in an effort to clamp down or to monitor live bird sales. So what we've currently implemented is that all sellers and all buyers of live bird sales in the country need to be registered. And all the birds that are depopulated or that move need to be accompanied with a health declaration from a veterinarian, a state veterinarian or an animal health technician. In this way, hopefully we can try and bring some traceability to the movement of birds in the country.
What is currently the status of avian influenza in South Africa?
We've had 2 outbreaks so far that have been reported, both of them in Mpumalanga. The farms are actually quite close to each other if you look at them on the map. Both of these farms have been quarantined and the birds on either side have been culled out. The farm, there is a quarantine radius of 10 kilometers around those 2 sites where poultry movement is being very strictly controlled. At the moment it is only those 2 farms and we hope that we can contain it to that area.
Is vaccination allowed in South Africa?
Vaccination's not allowed in South Africa. The government won't allow it simply because if we start vaccinating for it, we run the risk of making the disease endemic to the country. Endemic means that it'll always be here. If we vaccinate birds, it also makes our diagnostics very difficult because the birds will show up positive on tests. So there is some work being done by certain pharmaceutical companies in this line because avian influenza is not only a South African problem, it's a global problem. And possibly in the future we will have an option to vaccinate. But currently in South Africa we are not allowed to vaccinate.
What is the immediate or potential danger?
I think the immediate danger is to our poultry farms, particularly in the area of the outbreak. So those poultry farms are on high alert. Their biosecurity has now been pushed up so that they can try and keep the virus from entering the farm. If you look at the industry, currently all of our exports to neighboring countries has been stopped. And if those countries do look at importing again, it will be on an individual basis with the particular farm involved that they are importing from. The human health risk, however, I think is very little. If we look at the outbreaks in Europe, in America, in Asia, these involved large numbers of poultry with very close interactions with people on all the outbreak farms, and there has not been one reported case of this particular strain H5N8 infecting humans.
There are rumors on social media which says we cannot eat chicken and eggs. So, Craig, is it safe for us to consume chicken and eggs?
It is absolutely safe for people to eat chicken and eggs. Those rumors that are circulating and those social media posts are uneducated and unfortunately have given us a bit of a bad rep. But the product chicken and eggs poses no risk to humans whatsoever.
There you have it. The current outbreak of the avian influenza is the first for the poultry industry, but it's contained at 2 sites. If South Africa manages to contain the disease at the 2 sites and succeed to implement sufficient biosecurity measures, further losses will be reduced. To date, no human cases of infection with avian influenza H5N8 have been reported. Poultry producers need to be vigilant and biosecurity measures should be heightened. Until next time, goodbye.